Hello, everyone. This is Nate too. This is another letter, and this one's a formal grievance and demand for action oversight of the DOJ FBI compliance with the Epstein Files Transparency Act and its expansion of the investigative scope. To the representatives, I am writing you today as a concerned citizen to urge the House Committee of Oversight and Accountability take decisive action regarding the systemic failure of the Department of Justice, DOJ, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, to comply with the Epstein File Transparency Act, Public Law number 119-38. I request that this letter be read on the House floor and entered into the official record to ensure full accountability. One, chronic failure of the FBI and DOJ. The FBI has been in possession of significant records regarding Jeffrey Epstein and his network since at least 2006, when Operation Leap Year was the first initiated. Despite having decades to investigate, it required an act of Congress in the late 2025 to force even a partial release of these files. As of January 2026, the DOJ has reportedly released less than 1% of the estimated 5.2 million documents in its possession. The level of delay combined with the fact that the FBI ignored early warnings as far back as 1996 is an indictment of the agency's leadership. I urge committees to uphold their agencies to the letter of the law and, if necessary, initiate impeachment proceedings against senior officials who are willfully obstructing the statutory deadlines. Three, abusive redaction. The current redaction process is being used to shield potential criminal behavior. It is unacceptable that the DOJ is redacting names and information under the premise of false allegations when much of this information has already been unsealed in court and are verified by investigative journalists. The committee must demand an unredacted index of all files to ensure that the executive branch is not self-censoring to protect powerful associations. Three, international and state coordination. I formally request that the committee expand its investigation beyond federal borders. The committee must make a formal request for information and evidence from France and Interpol to secure travel logs, financial records, and investigative files related to Epstein's Paris residence and international association like Jean-Luc Brunel, state investigator, and specifically from Florida and New York, who to reconcile federal inaction with state level evidence gathered since 2005. Accountability for evidence and political neutrality. The committee must demand a formal accounting of all video evidence seized from Epstein's residence. We need to know if these recordings have been used for any prosecution, and if not, why they have been withheld from the judicial process for so long. Furthermore, I am deeply concerned by the reports of the party line investigations targeting individuals for their political beliefs rather than criminal conduct. The FBI and DOJ must return to a standard of neutrality. Oversight must ensure the federal resources are used to prosecute sex traffickers and their enablers, not to silence political dissent. Thank you for your attention in this matters. I look forward to seeing these concerns addressed in upcoming hearings on the House floor. And I have included sources like the ABC 10 with Bill and Hillary Clinton are attempting to refuse to go to Congress for the Epstein files. They were I understand they were subpoenaed and they had the lawyer draw up the paperwork and they're not going. You can also look at democracy docket where they show the 1% is all that's been released. House Committee Oversight Accountability, and that's on the federal government website. Just Security 2025, August 18th, has a timeline of the Epstein Maxwell law enforcement failures. The Guardian 2026, January, U.S. Justice Department has released less than 1% of the Epstein files, another backing up that. And U.S. Department of Justice, blah, 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 case number, requesting from French authorities in the Epstein case. And yeah. Yeah, my whole problem with this is I didn't realize how long they actually had the files. Everybody's been saying that the files came about during his first term. That's not true. They actually started this investigation in 1996. In 2006, they had the Epstein files. They had them all. And in 2008, they signed a deal with Epstein, which was later found out to be an invalid plea deal. It only prosecuted him and Maxwell on these charges, and it said that all the co-conspirators would not be prosecuted. And in 2019, they reopened it to start or reinvestigated that to get what they needed to, and they started the investigation. So the documents have been reopened 2019 today, and so there was no prosecution under Obama or Biden. And my problem with Obama is that bad deal was made. So basically, 11 years later, it took them 11 years to figure out there was a bad deal made, and they finally prosecuted it. And I don't count the prosecution of Epstein and Maxwell as part of Biden. It was done during his term. Epstein was going to be done during his term, but didn't because of circumstances. But Maxwell was. And I hold that was not actually Biden. It was the previous administration started that through their DOJ. And granted, yes, they should have their own what they do. They shouldn't be told by the president what they can and cannot prosecute, which means they shouldn't get involved, which is why I understand why Biden, Obama, and them didn't get involved. I mean, this goes all the way back to George W. Bush. That's how long they've had these records and how long the investigation's been going on. So there is the failure in the system. I understand taking the time to get all the documents together, prosecute, that was 1996 to 2006. And that makes sense because it was a big organization. But here it is, 2026, 40 years, let's see, no, 30 years. So 30 years later, they have not completed the investigation into the documents, which now brings statute of limitations into play, which I don't know what the federal statute is on these crimes, but it could have ran out. So moot point. But here's where I think we should also request that as they find the people in those records and they are official, they should have to put their name on the official, at least put their name on the registry. But also there needs to be a change in those rules, especially for minor children. Because I remember Texas used to be 7 years from the date of their 18th birthday. They were allowed to go that long before they did it. And my argument was it shouldn't be that long. It should be 7 days from the day they leave the house of that person. But I understand why they did it the way they did, and also because you still have visitation and stuff like that if they haven't been found before then. But Texas has now made the prosecution without a statute of limitations on these cases, which is also good. So that means if someone's in fear and don't want to report because they fear what might happen, they have time to do that. And before people jump down my throat about, well, they should come forward right away, look at how they treat these victims. You have people in court juries going, well, what was she wearing? If she wasn't wearing a full-length dress or pants, then it's her fault. No, a man or a woman should be able to walk down the street totally naked and nothing happened to them. Well, except for the breaking the law and getting arrested for indecent exposure, nothing should happen to them. They shouldn't be attacked by other people, either men or women, whatever, because that is the baseline for the whole issue is people are not addressing the cause and they're trying to remove the victim. Why are you doing that? Get rid of the cause. If men are the cause, get rid of the ones that are doing it. I'm sorry, but for a victim in these cases to have gone as long as they have without prosecution is utterly ridiculous. 1996, 30 years ago, this started. And here it is. We have not prosecuted but 2 people. 30 years, 2 people. And there's countless others involved. I also think that we should push because the federal government has had the records. They've had the videos of all this shit. Why have there not been prosecution from the videos of this? And I'm sorry, but we need the official confiscation records of what was gathered up because to ensure that nothing has been deleted or removed, because I'm afraid that our government right now is removing evidence in this case. This is a touchy subject that needs to be addressed, and I understand that people don't want to face it because of past history, but we need to address it. This needs to be out in the public. We need to stop hiding behind political affiliation. We need to stop hiding behind what the victim was wearing. This needs to be out front and focused and not just the moment of the year. We went through the Me Too movement. Not a whole lot has happened since the Me Too movement. We've had this prosecution since 1996, but nothing's come about. These victims come forward and given their testimony, and they still have yet to do anything. I'm looking at doing another in-depth report on the Epstein files because there's so much going on in that case that is being misplaced and overlooked. But I urge y'all to use the letters, write to your congressmen and representatives, your senators and your representatives, congresspeople, and also call and demand that these people be held accountable and demand that these records be investigated, ensure that they're all there, and have them remove the redaction for the Oversight Committee. There should be absolutely no redaction to what the Oversight Committee sees. Granted, the name of the person involved, the victim, should be redacted before it comes out in public. But I don't think it's right that they're redacting full pages of a document for no reason, calling it false information. If a person from Epstein sent an email, that is not false information until it has been investigated. And I would say a lot of stuff what they said is false is maybe not totally false, but not totally true either. So yes, it does need to be investigated. And the name being on the flight log, the name being of the person being on the island is not justification for them being guilty of the crime. There does need to be evidence of it. And I'm sorry, but if you have videotapes of this shit happening and you have not produced that to the government and judiciary, to judges for court, you are responsible as the person and should be held accountable. And I would go back to 2006 when they started doing it. I would hold those people accountable and ask them why they did not prosecute it along the way. And especially Costa, the one who made the deal to only go after the 2, Epstein and Maxwell. That should not have happened. That should have been called out years ago. But again, the presidents are not supposed to be directly involved in the cases that DOJ and the FBI are handling, unless it's something on that level. But as far as the Epstein, this needs to go. Why have y'all not prosecuted this yet? Why did y'all go from 2006? In 2008, you signed a deal, and then all of a sudden in 2019, you go, "Oh, that was a bad deal." Why was it not investigated between those two times? Why were they not looking at other criminals? That was at a state level. And granted, at a state level, but the federal government got a hold of the records. They should have completed more investigation, and they should have held more people accountable and demand that those videotapes be used as evidence in a court case, and they need to prosecute the people on the videotapes. That is proof that they're guilty of the crime. Thank you for your time. Like, share, follow. Probably, sorry about all the extra at the end. There are bibliographies on the end of my letter that will be attached that you can check. But please, 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 please contact your representatives and get this information in there and ensure that they follow up and continually follow with them to see what they're doing. Thank you for like, share, follow, subscribe if you need on my other socials, which should list here on Substack and others. Thank you and goodbye.